Hello, and welcome to this new episode of Become a Competent Biblical Counselor. I'm Dr. Dave Jones, and today's episode is entitled Determination with Energy. What would you do? The scripture that I want to use today is 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 2, where it says, "Preach the word, be prepared in season and out of season." That's what I want to emphasize on, is to be ready in season and out of season. Whenever anybody calls you unexpectedly on the phone for help, be ready in season and out of season. So I met Jim at a local church ministerial conference where he is actively involved with being a motivational resource for the elderly church members at the churches making up the conference. We developed a great relationship and we enjoyed each other's company. Jim is an Army vet at 78 years old, is a deacon at his church, and has a sickly wife. Jim has some medical issues, but none that may be unexpected from a person of his age. Jim has a great disposition, is well-dressed, heavenly involved with the community, and has a great sense of humor. One day, Jim called me to inquire about how I was doing and how he hoped everything was going fine with me. He said he just wanted to check in. Jim never did this before, so I knew there was something else on his mind. After a few minutes of idle talk, he finally opened up about his concerns. Seems he spent a lot of time with people his own age, and upon listening to their maladies and issues, became concerned about his own. Jim looked over his life and realized that his days were coming to a close. Keep in mind, he was in pretty good shape and temperament. Jim was beginning to think that maybe he should act his age and not be so active. After all, his friends were all such more lethargic and reserved, and maybe he should just slow down. Obviously, this didn't sit too well with him. He enjoyed his life, but now had doubts. He was conflicted and wanted to continue his many involvements, but thought that maybe he shouldn't. After all, he assumed people were making fun of him. So what would you do? This is the point where I'd like you to go ahead and just pause the tape and just think about what is it that you would do in a situation like this. You had no idea it was coming. A phone just rang, and you've got somebody who's presenting these issues to you. So what would you do? Take some time, think about it, and then when you're ready to resume, just go ahead and push the play button and resume the episode. And when you do, I will read to you what my response was to this person and the problem he was having. And this is just a suggestion of what you could do. This is not the absolute answer of how this was to be resolved. Just something to give you some idea of how I handled. Okay, so now we're ready to resume, and this is how I responded. Jim lost contact with what God had in store for him. I told Jim that God had given him the body and personality to be used for God's glory. I impressed upon Jim that just maybe someone his age could use the motivating factor that since the Bible makes no reference about retirement, that he too can continue to be useful for and to God. Such a revelation was mind-opening to him, and he began to see a new purpose and goal for his life. But he needed more. He didn't know what to do now. Jim loves to read, so I introduced him to a book that I had just finished called Wrinkled But Not Ruined, Counsel for the Elderly by Dr. J. Adams. After a few days, Jim called me with a new excitement and purpose to not only be very thankful to God for his life, body, energy, health, and purpose, but to also tell me that he decided to buy a dozen of those books to hand out to the many elderly friends he meets with every day. So it wasn't a difficult case. It wasn't a difficult problem. It was something that could be handled very easily, and you don't need any professional training or guidance or experience to handle all of this. It's just simple facts pointed out to encourage and offer hope to someone who is just temporarily confused. Let's look at another example in the very next episode.